I call to order this regular meeting of the Minnehaha County Planning Commission, and as a courtesy to everyone, make sure that your cell phones are turned off. Please note that tonight's Planning Commission meeting will be rebroadcast via CityLink and posted on www.minnehahacounty.org for viewing by the general public. Any final action taken on any conditional use permit applications tonight will take effect 5 working days following this meeting unless a written appeal of the Planning Commission's decision is filed in the Planning Office by Monday, April 2nd. In the event of an appeal, the decision will be referred to the County Commission for a hearing on either Tuesday, April 24th at 9 a.m. or Tuesday, May 1st, on or after 9 a.m. The affected parties will be notified of the meeting date. Meetings of the County Commissioner also held in this same room. At this time, the Planning Commission will consider the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are perceived to be non-controversial and will meet all the requirements of the codes and regulations. The consent agenda will be acted in one motion with no public hearing on the item unless there is public or the commissioner staff requests that it does get removed to the regular agenda. Also, the February 26th approval minutes are on the consent agenda. Is there any objection from the Planning Commission to any item on the consent agenda? Okay, next I will read the items on the consent agenda. Item number 2 is conditional use permit 1809 to transfer one building eligibility from, Halverson's Addition. The petitioner is Craig Halverson. It's approximately 6 miles west of Garrettson. Item number 3, conditional use permit 18-11. This will allow a 5,760 square foot total accessory building. The petitioner is Kylie Butner and is approximately 5.5 miles north of Brandon. Objections to any of those?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
A motion's been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Any of those items that have been approved, you are free to go. We'll move on to the regular agenda.
Madam Chair, I'll have to recuse myself from items 4 and 5 on the regular agenda.
I will be recusing myself on item 9.
Okay. That also means that they will have to step away from the table.
On those items, yes.
Kevin?
All right. Kevin Hookman, County Planning Department. Item number 4, the first item on the regular agenda, is conditional use permit number 1808 to allow Class C hog CAFO of 960 animal units. This hog CAFO is located in the south half of the southwest quarter of the southwest quarter, the southwest quarter of the southwest quarter, of section 18-101-52. If you recall, this item was continued from our February 26th meeting. At that meeting, we discussed the item. There were several people who came to the hearing, several neighbors, and it was discussed a little bit there. And part of the reason why it was deferred was that the petitioner at that time did not send the notices as required by the ordinance. On March 15th, 2018, the petitioner submitted the receipts showing that the notices were sent as required by the ordinance for this hearing, so the item can be voted on to either approve or deny the conditional use permit. Again, the petition is for a 2,400 head swine finishing facility which is a Class C CAFO of 960 animal units. Staff has recommended conditions for this facility. And since they were not, I don't recall reading them last time, I'll read them for this time. Condition number 1, the facility shall be limited to swine confinement of 960 animal units in size. Number 2, the CAFO shall comply with all applicable regulations of the county zoning ordinance. Condition number 3, the facility shall conform to the submitted site plans. Any minor changes may be approved by the planning director at the Minnehaha County Planning Department. Major changes will require an amendment to this permit in a public hearing. Number 4, the manure containment facility must conform to be in conformance with South Dakota Department of Environment and Natural Resources design standards for any newly constructed waste containment facility. A registered professional engineer shall certify the plan specifications and the construction of the facility. Number 5, the proposed barn shall have an engineered certified drawings that shall be submitted for the review of the building inspector prior to the issuance of the building permit. Number 6, a building permit is required for all structures prior to construction. And number 7, the Planning and Zoning Department reserves the right to enter and inspect the CAFO at any time after proper notice to the owner to ensure that the property is in full compliance with the conditional use permit conditions of approval and Minnehaha County zoning ordinance. And as this was presented earlier, there may be more people here, so I will have that hearing now. Is there any questions?
None. Is the petitioner here? Please state your name and your address.
My name is Craig Lucas, and I live at 26453 455th Avenue, Humboldt, South Dakota.
Are you okay with all the conditions that,
Yes,
okay,
yes.
and the mailings were done
Yep.
properly the second time around?
Yep.
Have you had, I guess, I do have a question for you. The fact that you did the mailings the second time around, do you feel that maybe more people were aware of what was happening with what you were doing?
Probably not.
Okay. Okay, we'll let you sit down for now, and if they have any more questions, we'll call you back up. Any other proponents? Any opponents to this item? Will you please come forward and state your name and address?
Glenn Kropensky, 26425 455th Avenue. Live just to the north of the proposed quarter that's shown on the proposal. And my concerns, of course, being on the north side of the property and relationship to the proposed permitted hog barn would be the impacts of everything that's associated with running a hog confinement building. And I suppose one of the first thing would be the potential possibility for the smell and the dust associated with the building being upwind from the facility. My wife does have a compromised immune system, and so should be more vulnerable to any of the respiratory ailments that the fine dust from the facility with the south wind blowing that into my property could pose an added risk for her. And I just feel that the potential is there just for a very negative influence on my quality of life and the enjoyment we have from living in the fresh air in rural South Dakota. And for that reasons, I stand opposed. Also, the impact of the proposed owner does own property to the north of me, and if any of the course waste is transported to that location, then it would all be going on our rural road by my house, and the additional dust and impact of that and potential for spillage possibly would also have a negative impact. So for those reasons, I'm opposed to the proposed facility and permit. Thank you for the opportunity of being heard.
Madam Chair, could he point out exactly where he is?
Sir, could you point out on the, where you are located or where you live?
Oh.
This is where the applicant lives. Right there's the applicant's farmstead.
Okay.
We live north of that.
Yep, right there.
Right there?
Yes, sir.
That's what I thought.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any question?
Sir, how far do you live from the Blacktop Road to the south?
I live,
Is it a mile?
no, it's not quite a mile. I'd say 3/4 of a mile.
Thank you.
Yep, yep. So,
Anyone else? Will the petitioner please come forward again?
Sure.
Is that a gravel road?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Who actually maintains that or,
The township,
okay. Are they well aware of what
right.
is gonna happen there and everything? Okay.
And it, like, I do have land north there, and I will be putting manure on that, but I plan on pumping it through a hose, so I'm not gonna be driving up and down the road.
Okay.
This will be put on through a liquid hose so that I won't have traffic or dust, I'm hoping.
Any other questions? Jeff?
So where on that property do you plan to put this facility? It seems to me last time it was going to have a road coming off the paved road. So we lost our picture there.
It'll be where that red dot is, right?
So it's going to be basically about as far as it can be from your
As far as.
your
from-
neighbor's place.
Right, as from his house as I could get it, yep.
Thank you.
That all?
Any other questions?
I guess if I may. So what do you think about the prospect of dust coming as
There shouldn't be any dust. It's a liquid manure pit. I mean, there shouldn't be any dust from any of that. I mean, if anything, it's gonna be more of a moisture. Or there could be odor, but like we had on that odor model, that doesn't get to his house.
Sir, you're actually gonna be running this operation yourself, your family, or you?
Yep.
Okay.
The pigs will be brought in by another owner. I won't own the pigs.
Any other questions?
I guess I would have a question for Glenn, if he could come back up.
Sir, would you like to come back up, please?
Sir, does the fact that it's about as far away from your property as can be arranged help at all? And what else could be done that would make this operation more acceptable to you and your family?
it could not be built. That would be very good.
Okay.
Besides that, you know, I've known other people, I have family members that live very close to these types of facilities, and even the best of plans and the best regulations, it's never adhered to the degree that one would hope, and there's always smell, and there's always dead carcasses that can't be buried or whatever, and there's always smells, and it's just a fact of life, and it's a fact when you live near these facilities. And so I'm here voicing my opposition for that reason. And you know, beyond relocating that facility to other properties he owns, I don't see how else it could be changed.
Thank you.
He does own other property, at
Becky?
least I think.
Would you feel that if there were some trees planted on the north side and around the corner a little bit to the east, so that any prevailing winds would help with odor, would that help make this more acceptable for you?
it would be doubtful that trees would block any odors. I'm not the expert on that, of course, but I'd say that's unlikely. Thank you.
Discussion?
I'm looking to my fellow commissioners for a comment because I'm full of them.
Adam, any comment?
I think he's gone out of his way to help keep it away from all his neighbors in there. I think trees would help though. I mean, I do think trees would help absorb some of the smell there if he felt comfortable. I guess that'd be up to the petitioner. But I think it's a good spot there. I guess it's away from, he's a ways away from his neighbors there. Like I said, you're not gonna eliminate all the odors, that's a given, but you can do what you can, and I think trees would help a lot too around there.
Mike, any comment?
No, I think I kind of echo what Adam had to say, and not to say it's a positive or a negative, but it's kind of a fact of living in the country that sometimes you do have that experience with odors and dust that might blow across the dry field as it is now. So for that reason, I guess I think that it's a good thing.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Jeff?
So I think that, this part of the county is not as densely populated as others, and certainly being on a paved road is a great asset, I think, to hold down on dust and stuff. We're a mile away from McCook County, and I really think that it's not a bad location for this type of operation. And certainly there's always, even living here in Sioux Falls, occasionally I've smelled something. Maybe it was the John Merle's plant, maybe it was my neighbor's barbecue, but hot dogs. Anyway, I guess I would make a motion to approve this conditional use permit 18-8 with the conditions as outlined by the staff.
I'll second.
A motion's made and seconded to approve the conditional use permit 18-08 with the conditions that were brought before us by staff. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5. David?
Good evening, Commission. David Heinold, County Planning Department. Item number 5 is a request to allow a conditional use permit for a Class C swine CAFO consisting of approximately 960 animal units. The property, I'll skip forward here. It's owned by Richard Funke. It is approximately 1.5 miles northwest of Garrettson. As you can see here, the entire property is outlined in red. The actual proposal is to be located in this very southeast corner, right along the fence line. Just skipping forward to the site plan, which actually shows that zoomed in portion of that. This also shows the setback distances for residences. For Class C operation would be 1/4 mile to the nearest residential dwelling. As you can see, this is 1/4 mile, and then this other one is 1/2 mile around. This is the nearest residential dwelling. It's located just to the northeast. You're actually looking at this. I should back up a little bit, but to the east of this line right here is Rock County, Minnesota, and this is our county, South Dakota. So right on the state line there, and this dwelling is in Minnesota. Staff has received a couple of concerns from the residential dwelling across the state line there about concerns about the differences between ordinances. Just reiterating that the setback for Minnehaha County is 1/4 mile for a Class C, this request for a Class C operation. So the narrative for the proposed swine barn shows that the building would be a single story, about 393.5 foot by 51 foot structure with 18-foot sidewalls, which would house approximately 24 head of finisher swine that are over 55 pounds. The structure will be built over a concrete pit, which will collect and maintain all the manure produced from the facility. Just going through some of the things with the conditional use permit applications for concentrated animal feeding operations. Checklist for the use that's there. As I went through the site plan, the building would actually be located right here. Actually, I skipped forward past the setback map. This shows the petitioner's site plan. So as you can see here, this is that township road right along the state line. The driveway would be located right here along that fence line. I got a few pictures that show that driveway. Right now it's just a cornfield. So the driveway up to the building itself, this is where that building would be located. There's actually what's classified as an intermittent stream based on the United States Geological Survey, their 7.5-minute topographical map, which runs approximately in this course as the petitioner has laid out there on the site plan. The distance meets the separation criteria for the minimum separation criteria for all environmental setbacks, which includes the things like intermittent streams, which is this is classified as I just mentioned. In any case, the building itself would be located over 100 feet from, which is that minimum setback distance. So the site plan itself, so any structures or corrals should be located at least 50 feet from the property line, which this actually shows that would be well over 200 feet from the property line would be to that distance. I believe it's about 250, which shows on that site plan. Just going through so the applicant has provided a dead animal disposal plan for the particular, the site itself, which just going through quickly as far as their plans to use a rendering service to promptly be able to dispose of the mortalities that will exist from the proposed use. Actually, I should go back here a second. Missed one thing. The applicant has included in the narrative a fenced-in mortality area for those dead animal disposals as part of that the plan for accomplishing.
Madam Chair, could I interrupt
Yeah.
David for a second?
Sure.
So David, is that a fenced with opacity? You can't see through it, is that right?
So the petitioner he did include that it would be
Thanks.
three-sided fenced-in area for the dead animals to be placed prior to pickup. And actually, yes, so the minimum would be a 4-foot-high enclosure, as the petitioner has stated. So skipping forward, number 4, with the nutrient management plan, petitioner has manure as a valuable component to the property. This is the benefit to nearby fields in the area, which as I mentioned, the concrete pit that they described in the narrative, that would help contain the manure on site. Which would further mitigate any potential odors. And then, so getting into the waivers, as I mentioned with the setbacks, there are no waivers that would be required because the facility meets all of the requirements for the residential dwelling setbacks. Since this facility is not over 1,000 animal units, it does not require a permit from the State Department of Environment and Natural Resources. And so in going through the construction documents, because this building does exceed the length of, it is a large building, it'll have to go through the correct building permit process for getting the right plans certified by the proper agencies and the engineered plans for footings and foundation, the building itself. So going through, I'm gonna skip forward a couple of the pictures that I took of the site itself. This was provided by the applicant, is a odor footprint, which shows actually the dwellings and based on a modeling tool that's been put together by a third party. So this is the site itself. As you can see, this is that fence line. This is where that driveway would be. There's kind of a little existing approach there right off the gravel road. And you're looking straight west. And this is looking towards the northwest. This, you can kind of see it. There's a little bit of a water area that runs through the field there. Could be more of a wet area for where that stream would be located, as I indicated. And the building would be off in the distance. This is looking north towards, as you can see, the trees here. This is where that the nearest residential dwelling is located. It's an existing farmstead there. And this is the south view back towards the county highway, which goes right into Garrettson. This is that residential dwelling. You can see the barn there with a couple of the trees around it. And this is just looking from the near that gravel road to the north of the right along the property boundary. And as you can see, there's another residential dwelling there by those trees. This is another nearest dwelling, which is also another couple agricultural buildings, and there's a couple cattle there as well. And this is a little bit further away. This is to the northwest. There's a cattle yard about a half mile to the northwest of this site, so straight kitty corner across there. So just going through the conditional use permit criteria, the effect upon the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the uses already permitted and upon property values in the immediate vicinity. The primary use of property surrounding this proposed operation is primarily farmland. As I've indicated, the site itself is entirely farmland. And there's a few existing farmsteads that are in the area. The 1.5 acre location, which the site would be contained on, meets all of the requirements for setbacks for dwellings and environmental features like streams and rivers. There is, as I mentioned, there is the single family dwelling that is in the farmstead across the state line to the northeast, which is a half mile away from the site itself. And then a little further out you have other operations, as you mentioned on this picture right here. 2, that the effect upon the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding vacant property for uses are predominant in the area. The construction of this operation would have little impact on the surrounding agricultural land. It may be even helpful for surrounding agricultural production because of the fertilizer that can be gained from manure that can be applied on cropland as fertilizer. Petitioner owns or operates enough acres, the entire property, as you see there outlined in red, to utilize the manure that is produced as a part of the operation. This is a new facility, so there is potential concern for buyers and developers that may have effect on the future development around the area of single-family dwellings, but this is entirely contingent upon the building eligibility, availability within the area itself for residential development. 3, that utilities, access roads, drainage, and other necessary facilities are provided. This location is just over a half mile north of the county highway, so they do have that option to get to County Highway 120. Petitioner plans to utilize well water and connecting to other utilities necessary at the site. I can clarify on that. 4, that the off-street parking and loading requirements are met. The 1.5 acre site will have enough space to meet those parking requirements. As you saw on the site plan, parking and loading in the right-of-way of the township road will not be allowed. 5, that measures are taken to control offensive odor, fumes, dust, noise, vibration, lighting, inclusive of lighted signs, so that none will constitute a nuisance. There are some possibilities for creating nuisance problems because this is a new facility. It's a change from agricultural land to a swine facility. These problems produce odor from the animal manure facility. Swine facilities can increase traffic and workers. They may increase the amount of dust on gravel roads. The narrative that includes the petitioner's written explanation of odor management and analysis through the map that has been provided in your packets. Despite the low densities of the residential dwellings in the area, there are certain odor control measures that can be a part of the operation of this size. It's recognized that in no case that the odor can be completely eliminated, but there is an option of adding things like shelter belt trees, but it is not a requirement of the petitioner because there are no residential dwellings within that setback area. 6, health, safety, general welfare of the public and the comprehensive plan. Proposed this operation will unlikely cause a significant increase to public health, safety, and welfare concerns because of the low density of dwelling units in the area. The proposed operation will comply with the conditions of this permit and the regulations of CAFOs and the zoning ordinance for Minnehaha County. These rules are designed to help allow for development while preventing much of the potential harms that a CAFO facility may create. This property is located within the agricultural production area that is identified in the Envision 2035 Comprehensive Plan, which goal number 3, page 91, defines the sole purpose of the planning category to protect, preserve, and promote agricultural uses and the economic viability of farming operations. This Action 3.5 also evaluate potential constraints for operation and expansion of agricultural production through the separation criteria, as I mentioned, for concentrated animal feeding operations. So staff finds that the proposed use for a Class C finisher swine concentrated animal feeding operation is consistent with the goals and actions of the Envision 2035 Comprehensive Plan. So staff recommends approval of conditional use permit 18-10 with the following conditions. And I can read through the conditions if you would like, or if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. There are 9 conditions.
Do you want to read through those, David?
Yeah, I can read through. So, number 1, the facility shall not exceed 960 animal units in size. 2, approval must be maintained by the appropriate township authority for the construction of the new road access. 3, an address sign must be purchased at the planning department and placed at the driveway of the facility. 4, the roof sorting and receiving area must be in conformance with South Dakota Department of Environment and Natural Resources design standards for any newly constructed waste containment facility, and a registered professional engineer shall certify the plan, specifications, and the construction of the facility. 5, the facility shall conform to the submitted site plan. Any minor changes shall be approved by the staff at the Minnehaha County Planning Department. Major changes will require an amendment to this permit in a public hearing. 6, a rendering service must be used to pick up and remove dead animals from the property. All temporary dead animal storage disposal sites shall be screened and not visible from neighboring dwellings in the public right-of-way. 7, that a detailed set of architectural, structural, mechanical, engineering, electrical, and engineered foundation design plans all have to be stamped and sealed by the respective licensed professionals. 8, a building permit is required for all structures prior to construction. 9, that the Planning and Zoning Department reserves the right to enter and inspect the CAFO at any time after proper notice to the owner to ensure that property is in full compliance with the conditional use permit conditions of approval in the Minnehaha County zoning ordinance. Okay, answer any questions?
Any questions for David?
Yeah, can you go back to the one picture where you had that intermittent stream on there?
Adam, did you have a question?
No, I just wanted to see what it looked like, I guess, on the
Okay.
picture there.
Any other questions for David?
Not yet.
If we have any, we'll call you back up. Is the petitioner here?
Yes.
Will you please come forward and state your name and address, please.
Richard Funky, 48249 267th Street, Brandon, South Dakota.
Any questions? Richard? I have one, Richard. Is this going to be like a family operation? You going,
Initially, we're going to be working with Sunterra Farms in helping get started up and learning the management operation of this. I have a son and son-in-law who do want to operate this in the future, and this is my way to expand the operation for them, so.
any other questions for him right now?
I guess, I was just looking at intermittent stream. I was just wondering, is that water coming off your neighbor's property, or how is that working there? Are you gonna dam water up from him, or is?
No, there'll be no obstruction of water. In fact,
Okay,
a number of years ago, a drain tile permit was applied for and approved and put in there, so the water flows through there even.
okay, all right,
But we'll still maintain the setbacks from the stream.
okay.
And you're fully aware of all the conditions that were?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Okay, we'll probably ask you to come back up.
Okay.
Any other proponents out there? Any opponents? Okay, why don't you come up one at a time and state your name and address, please?
Ray Hanson, 112 171st Street, Jasper, Minnesota. I'm the closest acreage there to the northeast. I believe that dust, the road's gonna get tore up. My township takes care of that. I've lived there for 30 years on that place, and the people that farmed that before, there used to be waterways going through that piece of ground. And where the water runs now, means that's been taken out. Any rain, anything, that water runs like a river right through that. It doesn't follow a waterway anymore at all. Like I said, I do live in Rock County, Minnesota. I talked to the planning and zoning over there. My setbacks and my rules in Rock County are different. They're further back. They're a half mile. Talking with him, he says that the Minnesota, all the counties are different, and when a proposed building like this comes up, that's gonna cross, it's not gonna cross the line, but the parameters cross that line, they go with the most restrictive plan that's in effect. So I believe that I should have a little more say in where that's set at. I think it should be further away from me, being it's coming over into my state, even though it is physically in Minnehaha County. And I'm sure there's gonna be neighbors coming up saying the same thing, whether they're in Minnehaha or whether they're in Rock. I guess that's all I have right now.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Jeff?
so if the half-mile setback was met, then you'd be comfortable with it?
I'd feel better. I still don't.
Because I think we're close to it. I mean, it's a third of a mile anyway.
Yeah, but I wouldn't like it, but it doesn't sound, I don't know if I'll be able to do anything about it. Like I said, I've lived there for a long time, and I've seen that piece of ground, and I know where the water runs, and I lived on top of the hill. I know which way the wind blows, and you can put up trees, but you can plant a tree this big, but it's gonna take 20 years for that tree to get big enough to block any of the odors or the dust or anything that's coming from this place. And I guess one other thing, if somebody was gonna build a house there and live there and farm that ground, I wouldn't be near as opposed as somebody that's 20 miles away from me and some other outfit's gonna come in and you know, be driving up and down the road, and their workers are gonna be there, and, you know. I guess that's all I have. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chairman. My name's Greg Beener. I'm with the Garrettson City Council. I'm here on behalf of the City Council and for the mayor also. We talked about this at the City Council meeting last week, and our biggest concern is odor. We have a city park on that end of town that's visited by thousands of people every year from all over the United States. We have a campground on that end of town. And we're just worried about the impact that that's gonna have. Right now, we're working with CCOG to develop a mile radius around Garrettson, looking for places to develop residential areas. And we think that by having a hog farm in that close of proximity to the north end of Garrettson is really gonna kind of limit development in that direction. So, I just wanted to stand up and express our concern on behalf, if it is approved, maybe if the council would consider, or I'm sorry, the committee would consider maybe a smaller operation or something that would make the smell less. Thank you.
Yeah,
Questions?
How far away is Garrettson? How far?
It's
are
like a
we-
mile and a half. That's actually to the northeast.
You can see, get the city, if you look here, this inset map, you can see
Okay.
Garrettson right here, and there's the applicant's property.
Is that your consideration, that if he would make it smaller, it would be more conforming for the city of Garrettson? Is that what you're saying?
If it didn't happen at all, that would be best, but, that's your decision as a committee. If it does, if you do want it to move forward, maybe if you would have considerations, maybe a smaller operation, something like that, so. That's just the things that we thought of. I'm not a farmer, I'm not familiar with hog operations, but I know there is a lot of odor associated. Even with the operation itself, but every year when the hog pit is emptied and they knife it into the fields, it smells. So, thank
Madam
you
Chair.
for listening.
Jeff?
You know, you're right about the times a year when it does smell. At the same time, that's not to say that the manure might not be transported some distance and put on the same lands that they're prospectively using. And so not having the hog barn there doesn't mean that you're not gonna have smells and stuff coming from the rural area where the manure is being applied.
Actually, Commissioner Barth, that's a good point. There's a boar semen production facility, it's 5 miles south of Garrettson, and it's a very small operation, and you can still smell that in the summertime from the south. Even that far away, you still get, you know what that is. So,
Thanks, Greg.
thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Helen Williamson. I live at 48716 253rd Street, which is to the south of where they're talking about doing this. My husband and I built that place 25 years ago, and most of these people sitting here, they've lived here about 20, 25 years. These people aren't from here. They just bought this land, and now we're gonna build it. My concern, though, is that my well is down by that creek that supplies the water to my house. I've used that well for 25 years without any problems. And these boys all know what happened after they took the waterways out. That water comes rushing over the side of that hill, and I don't care what he puts there, it's gonna come right down there. As long as he's gonna have hogs up there, that water's coming down. If that map doesn't show what a hill that is, that's a big slope. And when these boys talk about this being in Garrettson, as the crow flies, you're barely a mile and a half from the nursing home, from the swimming pool, from $1 million football field that they spent a lot of money and time and effort building. And this hog farm is gonna affect all of that. There isn't anything it's not gonna affect. The water that comes down into that little meandering stream that folks are talking about, that stream goes right into the Devil's Gulch. goes right into the park, comes right down the Split Rock, you know. The other day, people were concerned there was a little girl that drowned down here in Falls Park. You want to stop some of this pollution? Take a look at this stuff. That goes right into that creek. There's other places to build one besides up on the top of the hill where the water's gonna come rolling on down and go right into that creek bottom. And I know I'm probably not, you know, as important as a lot of people, but we've lived there 25 years. We rebuilt an old farmstead that was a pile of junk when we bought it. And it means a lot to me. My husband passed away 2 years ago. And if I go to sell that place after they put up, they can keep on saying the 900 units, but it's 2,400 hogs. We lived at Morris, Minnesota. I know exactly what hog confinement does to an area. Move up there sometime and see what goes on. You live up in that Stevens County area, it's all hog barns, cattle confinement, that's the whole area. It's just the way it goes. So I am opposed to it. I realize there's people that think this is a fine idea, and yeah, we're all worried about smell, but I'm worried about the water. There is no way to contain that and tell me that it won't spill down the side of that hill. An inch of rain will take that off the top of that hill the way that slope is. Who's gonna pay for my well?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Jeff?
Helen, you bring up a good point, but they're going to have a containment vessel that holds all of the
I know.
stuff.
I've seen
And then they're going to incorporate it or inject it into the ground. That's when the problems might occur. It's not going to wash down the hill based on where the pigs are. It's possibly from where the manure is applied. And so don't be concerned that you're going to have 1 million gallons of manure suddenly released down the hill towards
Like
you.
I said, we spent 5 years up in Stevens County up there. My husband and I ran a cattle confinement company with 2,000 head of cattle.
But we're
I
not
know something
using,
about cattle
we're not
confinement.
using the same telephone Grandpa used either. There's been technology changes,
I know.
and so things are not the same as they once were.
I know. I'm not that old, but I do know when manure comes down a hill. And I do know that that little meandering stream that you're talking about goes right down into that creek bottom, which goes right into the river.
So it's actually, though, I'm saying that it's more the application than the location of the barn. The application of the manure is what should, you should
Proximity
be.
to Garrettson is too close. Regardless, it's just simply too close. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else?
Thank you. My name is Greg Frank. I'm a resident of Garrettson, 912 Dallas Street, right on the south side of town. Feller over there, he mentioned something about water is where they're getting their water for that thing. I guess I'd be pretty concerned about that. The rural water coming into Garrettson, we've got plenty right now for the city that we have. But like Greg Beener was talking about, any expansion, and we're gonna be looking at doing something different for that. Hog farm that's gonna be taking some of our water away from us is gonna affect our development too. Like Helen, like she said, I use that little creek down there to trap crawdads. That thing runs all the time, like Helen says, it runs right into the Devil's Gulch, right into the park in Garrettson. And we get a lot of people in there. And as far as being 1.5 miles, 1.75 miles away from town, the dust and the particulates can float up to 3 miles. I can't remember who it was that said about the trees, but yeah, you can plant a tree or whatever, a knee-high tree, by the time it's gonna be doing any good, you know, well, I don't know if I'll even be here anymore. I guess that's some of my main things. I don't think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Hi, Ryan Nelson, 48761 255th Street, Garrettson. I'm a couple miles south, so I'm not going to reiterate anything everybody's already said, but I guess my concern would be, I didn't catch the corporation he's gonna work with off the bat, but I guess I'd like to know if they've had any past violations or things of that nature. You know, you got a manure pit and all that, you know, has there been any accidents or things along those, you know, that nature that could spill into the stream and waterways and stuff? Just one concern I thought of. I'd like to know a little history about who's coming in. Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Carl Leister. I live at 48737 253rd Street in Garrettson. My home is approximately 3/4 of a mile from the proposed location as the crow flies or as the odor drifts. I have a few items here. First of all, my main concern, I guess, is odor from that. We built our house out there 12 years ago. Like being close to Garrettson, but not in Garrettson. I'm a lifelong resident of the area. The documents that I found online here, he has the, you know, pertaining to odor, you know, you got the 97% nuisance level, 98% nuisance level. You know, that says it's annoyance-free does not mean odor-free. Annoyance-free means that odor intensity is a 2 on a scale of 0 to 5. For which the majority of the population would not find annoying. That means probably half the people do. You get those odors into the city of Garrettson. We rely heavily on tourism, on people coming back to our community. We're actively trying to grow our community. If they come in there and their first impression is a hog smell, it may not be a strong odor. It may be a strong odor, it might not be. But there is going to be an odor there at times. If their first impression of our town is it stinks, that's not good. You know, and being where I'm at, 3/4 of a mile away, it's even closer than what the town of Garrettson is. I don't know how that's going to affect my property values, my enjoyment of life on my property, my family's enjoyment. Another thing I'm concerned about is the truck traffic. The impact on that gravel road especially is going to get tore up with the increased truck traffic. I'm assuming that when they come out down to the county highway, if they head in toward Garrettson, they're going to be coming basically through town. Either through town or there's the highway that skirts the outside edge of town. Right on the northeast edge of town, there's a curve. It's a dangerous intersection the way it is. There are speed limit signs in place. Not everybody follows them. The increased truck traffic, there's going to be that much more potential for accidents on that corner. Drivers who are not familiar with the area, aren't familiar with that section of road. Also, our students in our high school use that road for track practice, cross-country practice out there quite a bit. My son runs cross-country on the road in front of our house. It's a very narrow highway, not much room for error. It would not take, you know, you mentioned health, safety and welfare of the community. I think the added truck traffic would definitely affect that. The gentleman, the petitioner, we feel has no ties to our community. He has, from what I understand, he owns plenty of property near his own residence. I don't know why he's not building down there instead of where up here by us. I guess the only other thing I had is, when they noted that mortality area for the rendering truck, I didn't know if that needed a setback as well from that stream area or the roads, things like that. Thank you.
Carl, where is your residence on the map anywhere?
Not on this map, it'd be just, it'd be about straight
down there?
South of here, yeah, just on the highway.
And where, if I could ask the applicant too, where's the nearest paved road as far as, I recognize there's a township road along the border there.
The paved road is half mile south of the proposed site, running east and west.
Thank you. Let me also, if I may, say that I remember we had another hog operation once where they were doubling the size of their operation, and the planning staff was going to double the height of the fence around the rendering pad, and the applicant said that none of the pigs had jumped the current fence, and so he didn't think he needed to double it.
Yeah, I guess I also understand that as of right now, they're not planning on planting any trees or anything. I know people have mentioned that before, but there's no plans currently to plant any shelter belts.
Okay, anyone else?
Hi, Troy Williamson, 110 161st Street, Garrettson. I live just over a half mile from where that proposed building is going to be on the Minnesota side. I guess I'm kind of here from the Springwater Township Board in Rock County, Minnesota. We maintain that road, don't get any tax dollars from South Dakota side. Wondering how that's going to get worked out. You know, gentleman's agreement, or if there's going to be Palisades Township, whatever, if they're going to shuffle some money over. You know, it's dragging out mud, this and that, dust control, increased traffic. That's probably the biggest concern from the board. With that, that's all I got.
Anyone else?
I'd like to say one more thing.
Okay, sir, come forward.
Gary Hansen, 112 171st Street, Jasper. Bear in mind, as he did point out, a mile straight to the west of me, there is a pretty large cattle operation already. And across the road, there's another cattle operation. And straight to the south of me, right across from Troy, is a very large dairy. And the manure from the cattle to the west is piled to the east of me all year long. I guess that's all I had to say, that, you know, where are we going to cut this off as to how many? And I don't believe that this 240 head hog unit, I don't think 130 acres is going to be able to hold that manure, that much manure. They have to go somewhere with it. Thank you.
Will the petitioner come forward again? Richard, can you address any of the questions that might have come up, maybe about the water? Where are you,
Our intent is to, if rural water cannot provide enough sufficient water, we're going to dig a well. I think that's our preference, is to dig a well anyway.
have you had any contact with the township people apparently that take care of apparently that gravel road or anything?
I'm taking this a step at a time.
Okay.
If I get zoning approval, then I would start going to the township to get these driveway permits and things like that.
What about any trees around there? Have you discussed that, or?
We've talked about it, but, you know, airflow for any confinement building is critical to the environment inside the buildings, and so, you know, the preference is not to have trees so that you don't end up with disease or illness inside just from ventilation issues. So, no, I haven't looked at doing trees, but I'd have to, you know, study that further.
I have one other question.
Well, the concern about the 130 acres, I do grid sampling on all my soils. I, you know, maintain a soil profile, and I don't waste the manure that I have. I do have 2 quarters to the west of that I could take manure to if I needed to, but I don't think so. I think that quarter would be sufficient to handle this manure that's on there. But and I did have a neighbor contact me that if I had extra manure, he would certainly like it on his farm, and it'd be straight to the north, so I don't think manure is a concern. And I think why don't I build that down where I live? I live very close to Sioux Falls, and there's no way can I meet any setbacks to even put any type of building down there, so that's why I'm farming up in that area.
This group that you say is gonna help you do the startup, are they reputable?
I'm sorry.
This group that you said that, I forgot the name.
Sonterra Farms is,
Yes.
I've
Any
heard of
back-
no violations. I've studied them. I looked at other large people to work with. And anymore in the hog business, you have to work with somebody in size.
The commission? Okay. Discussion?
There's a lot of points, I guess, that were brought up, and everybody has different opinion of it. I don't know, I forgot to mention the last one. I live 3/4 of a mile away from a pig farm that's much bigger than this, where I live, and that's only 1.5 miles north of Crooks, so. And yeah, you do get your smell every once in a while, but yet it's not all the time in there. And they do an awesome job, I think. They do go out of their way to do a good job when they're applying manure and stuff like that too, so. I know it's a different company or a different outfit too, but I mean, yeah, you're gonna have your smell and it is, but it's not all the time. I ain't gonna say it's not all the time, but I think I can probably count on one hand how many times I can smell it, I guess, so. That's not guaranteed for everybody, so.
Mike, any comment?
Well, I guess I do know which hog confinement he's talking about. I live west of Crooks as well, and very rarely do I ever smell it. But again, that's not to say that there won't be issues or couldn't be issues with this one. Again, I think it's just a product of living in the rural community, and as some of the people did note that there already is a number of feedlots in the area, and one of the not say comprehensive plans, but one of the goals I think is to try and place those together. So in my mind, that lends itself well to this project as well.
Vicki, anything?
I think generally the location is good. I really appreciate the city of Garrettson's concerns, and I was going to ask our staff if I could.
Sure.
We have some other CAFOs located near cities. Can you tell us what other ones are located close? I know we have something near Baltic, but I don't believe that's hog. But what other kinds of CAFOs do we have located relatively close to cities? We're talking 1.75 miles.
Well, the hog confinement north of Crooks.
Is that the one they're
Yeah.
referencing? And how far is that?
1.5 miles.
1.5 miles?
There's also a cattle facility about 2 miles southwest of Crooks. Generally, let's see,
The hog operation north of Crooks, there's a cattle operation 1/2 mile north of that. There's a dairy farm east of Sioux Falls that's in a fairly densely populated area. Madam Chair,
Yes,
I
Dave?
guess I do wonder about the water supply and whether rural water would be able to supply that, or whether they would need a well, and of course what that would do to the water table. But then I also think about the road access and whether the Minnesota Township would smile upon the idea of giving, I don't know if they'd have to give permission or what, or if just a farm access road could be expanded into one that semi-tractor trailers could turn on. And of course, being on a gravel road, I guess I worry about that also. I wonder if maybe we should defer action on this and see if we can iron out some of those issues, like the water supply and the township access and the road. It's not my motion right now. I'm just throwing this out for discussion.
I don't disagree. I mean, I appreciate the comments that have been brought forward. I live about 2.5 miles east of Sioux Falls, and I have cattle operations all around me. I'm on an acreage by myself, but I'm also a huge, several huge developments. We choose to live where we do, but it is the purpose of this commission to decide the best land use for any conforming area in the county. I do reiterate kind of what Jeff said. I'm a little concerned about the road maintenance there and how that's going to work itself out. Maybe also the safety issues there. And I'm pretty highly concerned about the water. I'm wondering how that's going to work with Garrettson. And I mean, we've got to have some he's got to have water, but there's got to be, I think, a little bit better plan than what there is. So is that going to be a motion, Jeff?
I'll make a motion to defer for 1 month.
I'll second that.
Okay, a motion's been made and seconded, defer,
And then I guess I will talk to staff about working on those issues that I mentioned, the water, the road access, the traffic issue. You know, I do appreciate everybody that came with concerns and the idea also that people are willing to spend their money in Minnehaha County to bring additional economic development. That's something I like to see. And change happens, and it's going to keep happening.
okay, we have a deferral on for continual use permit 18-10. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. It'll be deferred for 1 month until we can iron out some of the.
The exact date is April 23rd.
Next, item number 6.
Good evening, Scott Anderson, Planning Director, and tonight I'm presenting conditional use permit request 18-12. The petitioner is Derek Rondeau and the property owner is Lena Wallman. This is for property that is located at 46333 Jeffrey Street, which is in the Brower addition, which is on the south side or south of the Interstate 90, south of Hartford. This is a request to allow a salvage yard. The subject property is approximately 1.5 acres in size. And to give you the background history on this, early in February, the planning department received a complaint about a salvage yard being operated out of the Brower addition without the necessary conditional use permit. On February 7th, staff went out and investigated the site and found that there was a salvage yard in operation. And on the next day, on February 8th, we sent the property owner a zoning violation notice. The property owner contacted the planning department and believed that the tenants had already obtained the conditional use permit. We indicated to her that they had not, and on February 26th, the petitioner submitted the request for the conditional use permit to operate the salvage yard. So that brings us, and I will also indicate that they paid a penalty for that late submittal. So that brings us to now to discuss the proposed use, which is the salvage yard. So on March 13th, I went out to the site and I inspected it. And if you're not familiar with the Brower addition, I would generally describe it as an industrial park or a business park. There are a variety of light industrial uses and commercial uses in the area. The property that's directly to the north and to the west of this area have been developed. And the area to the south is zoned agriculture and is part of a agricultural operation. As you can see on the map, the areas generally to the east have not been developed yet, although they are zoned light industrial I-1 for future development to be developed. Upon my inspection, I observed an excessive amount of mud and debris being tracked out onto Jeffrey Street from the subject property. I noticed vehicles and trailers that were parked in the right-of-way, and it appeared that there was no off-street parking that was provided. The lot adjacent to Jeffrey Street, or the subject property, was very muddy. The salvage yard was in operation, and there was material that was being moved and processed. And it appeared that the applicant was crushing some kind of material. I think when you look at our Envision 2035 plan, it indicates that industrial areas in the county should be encouraged to develop in a cohesive and an attractive manner. Our plan also goes on to state that the goals and the actions that we are to have a cooperative effort between the city, or between the county and municipalities when dealing with growth and development issues, and we should be working with them. So I did contact the City of Hartford on March 5th, and I provided the city with the entire development proposal from the applicant for the subject property. And I requested that the city provide some written comments to be returned. And the City of Hartford generously obliged, and they submitted comments to me and indicated that they do not support the proposed development of this site as a salvage yard. The city identified the poor condition of Jeffrey Street, the added heavy traffic, the lack of adequate maintenance as the road is concerned, but probably more importantly, the city indicated that they had concerns that a salvage yard at this location would not be conducive for any kind of future annexation into the city, and they had concerns that it wouldn't really fit into what they would like to see for future land uses on behalf of their community. The City of Hartford indicated that they would recommend to the County Commission or County Planning Commission a denial of the proposed request. As you know, we look at specific criteria for approval of conditional use permits or for consideration of conditional use permits. We look at what kind of impact it will have on the use and enjoyment of the other properties in the area, for uses that are already permitted, and for the property values in the surrounding area. And my opinion is that the proposed use will have significant impacts on the use and enjoyment of other properties in the area. There will be potential increased traffic between the subject property and County Highway 151, which is to the west, all along Jeffries Street. The proposed use could have negative impact on property values by decreasing the commercial activity and moving the uses more to a heavy industrial use. The second thing that you should look at is what kind of impact will this have on the normal and orderly growth and the improvement of surrounding vacant properties. And on this specific property, you can see that there is a lot of undeveloped property to the east and to the northeast of this. It is likely that a proposed salvage yard at this site will deter commercial activity and commercial development to continue onto those vacant properties, because they will be driving by a salvage yard and they will be observing salvage occurring on the property. The third item is what kind of utilities are necessary, and are there adequate facilities provided? Jeffrey Street, as I indicated, provides access to the subject property, and this portion of Jeffrey Street is hard surfaced. It is generally, though, the balance of Jeffrey Street to the west is what I would call standardly deficient, and it's not really all that well maintained. Increased traffic from the proposed use will have significant impacts onto that road. They will be moving junk, salvage, debris along that road, and that will certainly impact Jeffrey Street. Number 4, that off-street parking and loading requirements are being met. In this, I can say that the parking requirements are not being met. During my inspection, and I'll show you the pictures, I observed junk inoperable vehicles and equipment being parked in the right-of-way. It appeared that there was no employee parking or customer parking, and that they were parking on Jeffrey Street. The driveway and the parking lot are supposed to be hard surfaced, and they were not. It was basically a mud driveway and a mud parking area on the site. Number 5, are there measures being taken to control offensive odors, fumes, dust, noise, vibrations, lighting, or anything else that would constitute a nuisance? This proposed use will generate noise and vibration. The salvage activity will be loud as they are processing material and crushing and moving material around. Heavy equipment is used to move that material and crush it, and that will produce noise. And to what degree that noise might disturb neighbors is unsure or unclear. And the applicant did not provide any kind of lighting details, so it's impossible for me to indicate what lighting might be on the site. And the applicant did indicate that they will handle all, they indicated that they will handle all the materials, but they did not really provide any details on the contaminants, such how they will handle oil and other fluids would be disposed of. And the existing use, or the applicant's existing activities, are already tracking significant amounts of mud and debris onto Jeffrey Street, which is already a nuisance. There was no screening of the site in place at this time. Lastly, number 6, you are to consider the health, safety, general welfare to the public, and the comprehensive plan. It's my opinion that the proposed use does not meet the goals of our Envision 2035 plan. The proposal has been reviewed by the City of Hartford, and they have indicated it does not fit into the development pattern that they would like to see for their community. From a health and safety aspect, the proposed use will result in increased noise and traffic, and is not compatible with the other land uses within the Brower addition. Staff's review of the proposed use finds that the proposed use is incompatible with the existing land use pattern. It will negatively impact future growth and development of the surrounding vacant properties to the east and the north, and the proposed use will have negative impacts on Jeffrey Street. The applicant has already demonstrated that they will not abide by the zoning ordinance. They have parked vehicles and equipment within the right-of-way and on the driving surface of Jeffrey Street. The proposed use will cause noise and dust that will be a nuisance in the area. I will indicate, I'll state that the county works closely with our municipal partners. The City of Hartford does not support the request and feels it's not compatible and should it be annexed into the city. Staff is recommending denial of the request to allow a salvage yard at this site, and I'll go over the pictures for you now. So this was the site plan. You can see they're calling for Jeffrey Street up here, and this was their customer parking was supposed to be back here. There's a hoop shed here, and then this was outdoor storage and loading. This is basically what I observed. There was a piece of heavy equipment right here that was crushing and moving material, but this is the driveway and the parking. You can see right here is a vehicle that was parked in the right-of-way. This shows you the amount of mud that was coming off that property. And I understand that spring is never the best time for mud. It's generally muddy, but it is a requirement that this be, since this portion of Jeffrey Street is paved, this entire driveway and parking area is to be paved. This shows you the amount of vehicles that are being parked on the property. You can count, here's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a trailer that was parked out in the right-of-way. This was in the right-of-way. It appeared to me to be a salvage vehicle. This was looking down Jeffrey Street, and you can see the amount of mud. And I think I even zoomed in on some of the mud for you. This was the trailer that I assume that was being used. It looked like it was, the track sort of led back to the subject property, so it was out in the right of way. Once again, this is looking straight west, down Jeffrey Street. At the very end of this, right here is the county highway. You can see what maybe appears to be fluids on Jeffrey Street. And this is looking back towards the west at some of the other existing properties that are on the site. And this is looking to the north, across the street from the subject property. I will be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions? Jeff?
So Scott, you didn't see any lighting of the yard there or anything?
No, I didn't see any lighting.
Do they have any plumbing for their employees?
I don't believe that they do. There is a hoop building there. You can see it in the background here. And I don't believe that there is a bathroom facilities in there. I did receive a letter today that I forwarded on to the commission. I've also provided the applicant a copy of that as well.
Thanks, Scott. Is the petitioner here? Please come forward and state your name and address, please.
Name is Derek Rondo, 1701 West 39th Street, Sioux Falls, my address.
Any questions for the petitioner?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Jeff?
There are a lot of concerns I have here. You know, you basically went into operation without any permit, right?
That's true.
What are you doing with the liquids that are discharged from these vehicles, gasoline?
We have containment inside of the building in labeled containers and everything. I've been in contact with the DENR as far as the storage and transportation of any of the fluids. So the gasoline is captured, inside the building.
Do you burn it then, or do you take it?
Yeah, we burn it in
somewhere?
our service vehicles. So I have a filtration system. We pump it right back into the fuel tanks and effectively save money on fuel from the recycled gasoline. And then the motor oil is brought down. I have a second location down in Harrisburg, and we have a used oil burner there. So we bring the used oil down there for heat. So that's power steering fluid, transmission fluid, motor oil, axle grease, etc.
So you're not discharging into the soil any of these contaminants?
Nope. We were in contact with Scott Bickley from the DENR. He did a site check out at our location. We walked around for the matter of a couple hours, kind of looked at everything, and I had actually worked with him in the past at my Harrisburg location, and he was kind of aware of what we do as an operation.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair.
Paul?
How long have you been operating at this location, and how'd you pick this location?
This location, roughly about 3 months. I had done research in Minnehaha County to try to find something that was I-1 zoned with salvage conditions or I-2 zoned. From the research that I've done, this property in the past has been a salvage yard, has been used just for recycling cars, things of that nature. And right on the city's website, it had said that it was I-1 zoned, had the conditional use permit as a salvage yard. It was expired last year, I do believe. But through conversations that I had with the previous owner or previous tenant of the property, he had said that it was permissible to begin at this property, and turned out to not be true. So as soon as I found out that I wasn't in compliance, I came right down, put in the necessary applications, and paid the fine for beginning without permission, so to speak.
Jeff?
Do you sell cars then too?
I do at a different location. So the vast majority of the vehicles that you see here are from local tow yards in town, individuals who have just broken down vehicles of any type. We drag them out there, we process them, and...
So you don't sell them at this location?
No, we do not.
Sir, how many employees do you have out there?
At this location here right now, 2.
Do you have public facilities out there at all? I mean,
I do not.
Mr. Mullen? Okay.
This location primarily is not open to the public for, you know, buying parts or anything of that nature. I have a separate location for that. This is just for me and my employees, just for a spot to put the vehicles, you know, process them and then haul them off-site.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, you can sit down and we'll. Any proponents? Any opponents? Please come forward, state your name and address, please.
Teresa Seidel, 125 North Main, Hartford, South Dakota. I am the city administrator for the city of Hartford, and I'd like to thank the county and the county staff. They are very good with contacting the city if there's anything going on, you know, within our area or they think might impact, you know, or be a concern to the city. So they're very good about notifying us. They let us know that this was going on. Did take it to my planning board last week, and we did discuss, you know, the impacts of this and brought up quite a few of the concerns that Scott had pointed out during his presentation. Just to kind of reiterate a little bit, you know, we're first of all concerned that we're operating without a permit. They continue to operating without a permit. Just last week, I got a report that cars are still coming in. So even though this process is still going on, I mean, they're still operating. One of the main biggest issues on there is the condition of the road. Jeffrey Street going into there. It's been a concern for quite a while. It's a pretty poor road. It's in poor condition. It's got a lot of potholes in it, bad, you know, a lot of soft spots in it. Like I said, you know, the drainage is very poor along there, so, you know, more traffic on it, heavy traffic on it is just going to increase and help deteriorate that road. So we have concerns about that. I was just out there this morning, and granted it's raining, and you're right, but there is no hard surface in that facility at all. There is no gravel in there. It is a mud hole. And this morning, Jeffrey Street was full of mud just right in front of their facility there. So that trailer he showed in the picture, it's still sitting there today. So they are using, you know, Jeffrey Street as some of their parking and use. So we have concerns about that. No adequate screening, you know, like you said, when you go down Jeffrey Street, you can see exactly what's in there. To me, it doesn't look like there's any rhyme or reason or any orderly, you know, lining up the cars, or this area is for the cars, this is for parts or whatnot. Everything is just pulled in there, cars every which way, parts every lane around there. I mean, no sense of kind of any overall cohesiveness, very unsightly property. I'm glad he talked about, one of our concerns was, and what I had thought about later was the contaminants, you know, how are they addressing that, because nothing was in their initial application about it. I do see that they are anticipating to operate 7 days a week. I'm not sure why they would need to have hours of operation all 7 days a week. That might affect some of the neighboring property owners there too. And I guess to also point out, one of our biggest concerns being the city is that future annexation. This property, you know, we are on the north side of the interstate, they're on the south side. We are a growing municipality within the county. Someday in the future, couldn't tell you when, but I fully anticipate this to be part of the city. And, you know, it doesn't meet up with our comprehensive plan as far as having the salvage yard within the city limits. So, you know, we do have those concerns when we look at this property. And we thank you for taking those into consideration. I do have 3 of my board members here, if anybody has any questions, or I don't know if they would want to add anything to it, but
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, my name's Mike Volken, 46304 Jeffrey Street, the muddy street that we were just talking about here. I wanted to visit a little bit about what we're trying to do in the industrial park. And I'm part of a new group that endorsed by the county, and that's the new Road Association. which is now under the name of the I-90 Business Park. And we have spent the last year putting together our plan and securing financing. Roughly about a month ago, we signed all the paperwork with First Dakota for a line of credit of almost $700,000. We have Sayer Engineering doing all of the engineering work, and your county sent out the first assessments this past month.
I got complaints.
The phone's been ringing off the hook as far as the assessments, but our plan is a 3-year plan. The first 2 years is drained, well, we're doing the topos as soon as we can get in there. But it's gonna be a lot of with drain tile. We've secured the rights as far as to follow the natural flow of water across the neighboring farm ground, the Johnson property. And part of that agreement is a holding area so that he can capture some of that water for his cattle. So we're, first off, concerned about any contaminants that might flow naturally through rain or spillage or anything else that might contaminate his ground or that water that those cattle are, will be using. Secondly, we're trying to put together the program with the drain tile. First year, gravel, drain tile. Second year, gravel. Third year, asphalt. We think it's gonna take 2 years to heal the ground, and it's a long-range program. When we did our assessments, we based it on a 10-year amortization. We're in it for the long haul. It's the property owners. The only property owner that hasn't really attended a meeting or anything, and I don't know if she lives out of town or out of state, is Leona. But she's well aware when we do our, publications and notices and everything. Our attorneys, Meyer Henry Agency, who basically, wrote all the rules for South Dakota road associations. So we decided that we're gonna try to do this right. We're all property owners, and we wanna make the park nice. We changed it to the I-90 Business Park. We've already made our announcement with the GOED last year, what we were doing, because of the new industrial park going on at I-90 and 229. And we've had a couple of requests. In fact, one, Jesse, their economic development individual from Hartford, was part of the discussion with us, that there's a lot of those secondary businesses that are looking for probably a 2-acre plot, to service what's going on in the larger industrial park. And we think we're in a great location to do that. So consequently, we've already had some people that have come through and observed the property and that. And it's a little bit messy right now. We're not against recycling. We're all for it, done properly and with safeguards. But I just wanted to add that side of what we're trying to do. Thank you.
I'm Richard Brower, 46340, 261st Street. I owned adjoining property. I don't really know sure where I want to start with this, but they got a terrible mess up there. They got no regards for property lines. They got 3 vehicles parked in my property. They've been driving on my property and got ruts in there. Their semi-driver can't seem to make the curve very well, and he cuts the corner short, and he's just ruining the road. I mean, on one corner, I'll bet it's down that far from where they've cut it. I think we'd be better off without this. I don't really know whose fault, but the last time somebody was in there, they just piled all the junk up over on the edge of my property and burned it and burned up 4 trees that they killed. I don't know. I'm just not for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? Discussion from the commission?
Well, does the applicant have anything else to say?
Oh, sorry. Will the applicant please come up again?
I guess in regards to a lot of the things that were said, that, yeah, there is quite a mess up there right now. The weather's been holding us back from a lot of things and some equipment failure. But that's why that trailer's out on the road there. That actually doesn't belong to me, and I've told him several times to get it moved, and I haven't been able to coordinate him getting it moved yet. There's a independent contractors out there right now with his excavator. Most of that pile of loose material that you see there, just north of the hoop shed, is actually removed as of now. We hauled several semi-loads of that out of there, and we're working very hard this week to get most of the vehicles out of there to cut down on the amount of mess. As far as all the things spilling out on the road, we had an issue with another individual between that blue car there, and there was another blue one that was off to the west of it. Neither of those belonged to me. They were guys that were coming out to do some day labor, and I kept telling them to move their cars, and I'd come back and they'd moved them back to the road because of the mud that was out there. No excuse for blocking the right of way by any means, but given the chance, I'd make much more of an effort as far as having anything out on the road and that sort of thing. And then I've also been looking for a sweeper attachment for my skid loader to help get a lot of the dirt that's off the road, because a lot of tire tracks out on the road bring a lot of mud, and just it's pretty unfavorable for the neighborhood. So I've been looking into getting a sweeping attachment for my skid loader, and I haven't been able to find one locally to be able to help with the maintenance of the road. And if that was a stipulation that the county wanted, I would help maintain the entire stretch of road. I've got a payloader and a skid loader, and I'd be willing to, help with the gravel or, whatever's needed to, if given the chance.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Any further discussion from the commission?
Madam Chair, I would ask Director Anderson a question, I guess. Scott, is the zoning here the same as it is over at the Crooks interchange there, where we had the T-auction auto thing that was proposed to go there?
Yes.
And the judge ruled that it was in fact a salvage yard and not permitted.
Wasn't a used car sales, but it is a conditional use permit in our zoning ordinance. The difference, I think what your question is, the difference between the Crooks exit is that they weren't applying for a salvage yard. They were applying for an auto auction.
When in fact they were a salvage yard.
And that's what the judge ruled on.
Okay. And if I may, Madam Chair, Scott, what power do we have as far as shutting this operation down? Do we, is it the county commission that has that, or is it the planning department, or is it the planning commission?
It would be, in my opinion, it would be a combined effort between the planning department and the state's attorney's department, because this is a zoning violation. It's not really considered, it may not be considered a nuisance. If we were to consider it a nuisance, we could take it to the county commission, declare it a nuisance, and have it abated. If it's a zoning ordinance, and we can direct maybe a question to our state's attorney that's here, but if it's a zoning violation, which this is it's a land use that's violating the zoning ordinance, that would have to go through the state's attorney's office, and then we would do whatever due process is required with notifications. But eventually, if they didn't cease and desist and remove the property in a timely manner, then the state's attorney would prosecute it, I believe, as a zoning violation.
Answer your question?
It does.
Okay. Any other discussion? Paul?
Scott, the applicant said that there was prior salvage permit out there.
Several years ago, we had approved a permit for Scott Nitschke. Do you remember Scott Nitschke? And he did operate it for a short time. There were zoning violations with his operation. He failed to meet the conditions of approval. We worked with trying to get him to bring himself into compliance with the conditional use permit that was issued and the zoning ordinance. He failed to do that and ultimately abandoned the site or left it, vacated the property. He wasn't the property owner, he was a lease, he was renting the property from the property owner. But eventually he just stopped doing his activity there, his business, and left.
Any further questions?
I got another one.
Sure, go ahead, Paul.
So if we denied the application, do we also set a timeline for vacating, or what's the proper step there?
You could.
Stuff.
I mean, it's a lot of stuff. Ultimately, what we would do is we would treat it like any other zoning violation. We would send out a letter to the property owner, which would be Miss Wallman, and we would indicate that her property is not in not in compliance with the zoning ordinance. Typically, we would give that property owner a set number of days. We sort of look at the time of the year. I mean, in this case, since we're going into spring, I think that a reasonable amount of time might be 60 days to remove everything off the property. That would take us basically to, around June 1st. And that should be plenty of time for her to work with her tenant to bring the property into compliance, have all that material debris removed, and cease use of the property. And then, if they fail to do that, we typically give them a second notice, and then after that, we start working with the state's attorney for whatever legal recourse is deemed fit by the state's attorney's office.
Thanks.
Well, I'm going to make a motion to deny this, but I really feel that this operation, despite the proponents' protestations, is a clear and present danger to the environment, the neighborhood, the ag land downstream, the water. I think we need it to stop. So I'll make a motion to deny, and I'm going to ask to refer it to the regular county commission, which I'll mention to them tomorrow, and to the state's attorney's office.
So it would automatically go to the commission?
Well, if they, it could go to the commission on the 24th of April or whatever. If it's appealed, yeah.
I have a motion on the floor.
I'll second.
Okay, motion is made and seconded to deny the conditional use permit 18-12. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 7, Kevin?
All right, I'll get started. I'm Kevin Hookman, County Planning Department. Item number 7 is conditional use permit number 1813 to allow a Class C hog CAFO of 960 animal units. This operation is located 5 miles northwest of Garrettson, along County Highway 114 or 250th Street. The petitioner would like to construct a 2,400 head swine finishing facility, which is 960 animal units. The proposed facility is located adjacent or very close to an existing 430 animal unit Class C CAFO and unknown animals for a beef facility on the site. You can kind of see that in the picture here. There's a white barn on the picture and then some pens here for cattle. Because of the close proximity to this, the petitioner will be required by our ordinance to receive a state general permit, as it's it's closer than a quarter mile to an existing Class C CAFO. The petitioner has submitted site plans of the drawing and several site plans and a narrative included with that. The proposed confinement building in the narrative is shown as 122 feet by 165 feet. The proposed building would go, it's kind of hard to see in this little map, but just north of that existing barn that's located near the road. This would go north of the barn, kind of adjacent to the tree line there, which it does meet the setbacks from the right-of-way and property lines. As of right now, the petitioner is planning to, and it will be a requirement for the property to be platted as a separate property and be owned by the petitioner instead of the current property owner in order to be considered as a separate CAFO from the current facility. The facility does not have any plans for landscaping at this time. It does meet all setbacks from neighboring houses other than the current property owner, which he has a waiver for. All other structures, all other houses and buildings are outside of the 98% annoyance-free line of the odor model that was submitted by the petitioner. As noted, that this facility does meet the required setback. The required setback is 1,320 feet, or a quarter mile, from any dwellings, church, or businesses. There are none that this facility is located closer to this facility than that. So as part of the criteria for this CAFO, staff looked at several criteria that for all CAFOs, or for all conditional use permits. The first one being the effect upon the current property around the area. And as noted, that the petitioner has showed that the surrounding properties are outside of the 98% annoying-free zone for the dwellings. The general area is agriculturally, heavy agricultural. And since it's so close to an existing facility, it does kind of form essentially one block. And staff would note that if they were to combine these two and create a Class B facility, they do meet all setbacks for that as well. So that is to, in case that someday in the future they were to combine the facilities together. The effect upon normally orderly development in the future uses in the area. This will likely not affect the ag land and may actually help, as the manure can be utilized on surrounding cropland. There are a number of residential building eligibilities available, and that may affect their future development if somebody chooses to build a single-family dwelling in the area. Number 3, the utilities and access roads, drainage, or other necessary facilities are provided. The petitioner would be using an existing driveway that the current hog farm or hog barn does have. He would also be required to extend all utilities as needed to his own barn. 4, that off-street parking loading requirements are met. The facility is quite some distance away from the highway. There's plenty of space to meet required parking and loading to keep it out of the right-of-way. The measures are taken to control offensive odor, fumes, dust, noise, and vibration, so that none of these will create a nuisance. As noted earlier, the petitioner has submitted the odor setback modeling and showing that the likely extent of odor. Any management practices stated in the narrative, such as the rendering of animals or dead animals, are expected to be carried out. In addition, the Planning Commission has the ability to add conditions if they feel a petitioner's plans and staff recommendations are inadequate to mitigate any nuisances. That this plan meets the health, safety, and general welfare of the public in the comprehensive plan. The proposed swine CAFO will have to comply with the conditions of this permit and regulations of the 1990 revised zoning ordinance for Minnehaha County. The proposed CAFO is located firmly within the agricultural production area of the envisioned 2035 comprehensive development plan, in which a goal of the 2035 plan is to protect, preserve, and promote agricultural uses and the economic viability of farming operations. And we'll go through the site photos of this. This site plan shows that it meets the setbacks to the nearest neighbors. This is a picture kind of looking towards the proposed site. There's a tree grove on the farmstead. It'll be just outside and east of that tree grove. This is looking north from the driveway as you enter the property. The existing bar is just to the right there. You can see the feeder bins there, and it'll be just north of there. That's a picture of the existing barn looking from the highway. And there's a picture of the cattle that are on the inside the farmstead, inside the tree belt. This is looking directly south of the driveway. You can see the nearest tree line there. It's the nearest house to the south, which is a distance away. So looking down the highway, and the current barn is fairly close to the road, but it does meet that 50-foot setback. And you can see that there isn't any dwellings for quite some distance.
Kevin, that's a paved highway, right?
Yep, this is a county highway, paved.
Thank you.
And then this is looking east from the driveway, and you can see the fence of the current cattle confinement along the property line. Go back to the site plan. Staff finds that the proposed facility meets the requirements of the ordinance and goals of the comprehensive plan. Staff recommends approval of conditional use permit 1813 with the following conditions. Number 1, the facility shall be limited to swine confinement of 960 animal units in size. Number 2, the property must be platted as a separate property that meets all yard setback requirements. The plat must be obtained prior to the issuance of a building permit. Number 3, the CAFO shall comply with applicable regulations of the county zoning ordinance. Number 4, the facility shall conform to the submitted site plans. Any minor changes may be approved by the planning director at the Minnehaha County Planning Department. Major changes will require an amendment to this permit and a public hearing. Number 5, the proposed CAFO must obtain a state general permit prior to the facility being populated with swine. Number 6, the proposed barn shall have engineered drawings, certified drawings that shall be submitted for review by the building inspector prior to the issuance of a building permit. Number 7, a building permit is required for all structures prior to construction. And number 8, the Planning and Zoning Department reserves the right to enter and inspect the CAFO at any time after proper notice to the owner to ensure that the property is in full compliance with the conditional use permit conditions of approval and the Minnehaha County zoning ordinance. Is there any questions?
Not right now. Is the petitioner here? Will you please come forward, state your name and address, please?
Tony Simmonsma, 24954 477th Avenue, Garrettson, South Dakota, 57030.
Any questions of the petitioner?
I guess I was just wondering, how much land do you own around there? Have you got enough for the manure application on there? What's both of those?
There'll be a half section that it's on, there's a quarter, and then another quarter right directly by it, and then across the road there's another 80, and then some of the neighbors too that are willing to take the manure.
Okay.
Right across the road into the east. It'll be knifed in or dragged line.
And you're aware of all the conditions, the fact that the property has to be platted and,
Yes, ma'am.
okay. And that's understandable. And your father, from what I understand, lives across the road, is that correct?
He lives at the place right there.
Yeah, okay. Oh, sure. Any other questions for the petitioner? Okay, you can sit down. Any other proponents? Any opponents? Board, state your name and address, please.
Greg Franca, Garrettson, South Dakota, 912 Dallas Street. I don't think I can really be considered an opponent. I never realized how many of these things were going in, confinements. There's 5 on the ticket tonight. My concern is about the water again. I don't know how the water runs, but I guess that's my only concern. 5 miles away from town, that's plenty far. But you're talking, 2,400 hogs east, 2,400 more to the northeast. You got, I don't know what it says for cattle, going in 2 lots of cattle. And at some point, you're gonna have to kind of think about some of this stuff.
Madam Chair?
Chair?
Oh, good. Let her go.
Start. Go ahead.
I'd say I really appreciate your concern, and I'm glad that you bring up those concerns. Part of the requirement is the manure management plan, and the manure management plan requires that they have, or not manure management plan, I misspoke, the nutrient management plan requires that there are an adequate number of acres for the nutrients to be hauled, and there's very specific guidelines about, they have to calculate how much nitrogen is the corn uses, how much nitrogen soybeans might use. And so those water concerns are pretty well mitigated because of all of the requirements that are in place.
I think we're probably talking 2 different things here. I'm talking about drinking water for the animals versus drinking water for me.
Okay.
That's what my concern is. I don't know where they're gonna get their water, if they've got wells or whatever, but then you talk about the water table like we did before too. And like I said, in Garrettson or whatever, we're doing okay on water right now, but, it's just like any place else. There's only so much,
My understanding is that rural water won't take on any new facilities if they don't believe that they have adequate resources to be able to supply the water, and maybe someone else can speak differently to that, but that's my understanding of how, like, Minnehaha County Rural Water manages that. That's a good question.
Madam Chair.
Sure,
Yeah.
Paul.
They can only hook the facility up if they've got the capacity in the lines. These facilities run about 15 gallons a minute service that they require, about 2,400 gallons a day for a 2,400 head finishing barn. So they're not huge users, but most actually end up going in and doing wells anyway, just because it's a lot cheaper and the hogs don't need the high quality water necessarily. So just to give you an idea of what the water usage is on those, but a rural water system, I don't believe can hook up a commercial user or a user of any kind outside of residential if it would take away from the residential service. I can't swear to it. I've been told that's law, but I can't swear to it.
And Madam Chair?
Jeff?
I just wanted to comment, Mr. Frank, that I've only been here 12 years, but we've never had 5 in a night before. And, and I think maybe 2 in a night. I don't know if we've ever had 2 in a night. We have? Okay, well, I skipped that night, I guess. But this is a boatload, no question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else care to speak to this?
Madam Chair, I'd make a motion to approve this 18-13 conditional use permit.
I would second, noting that water will be something that will get sorted out if it moves forward, whether it's well or rural water.
A motion is made and seconded to approve the conditional use permit 18-13. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Item number 8. David?
Good evening, Commission. David Heinold, County Planning Department. This is a conditional use permit 18-15 to allow Class B beef CAFO 1,500 animal units. This property is located, now this is about, you can see Baltic is right there in the distance. Just as about 2.5 miles southwest, or a little bit more than that, about 3.5 miles southwest of Baltic. As you can see there, and you got Crooks down here to the south of there, about 3 miles or so. The petitioner is requesting this. Talked with the petitioner as I met with him on site at the property itself to discuss the requirements that are set forth in the concentrated animal feeding operation, specifically for the minimum separation criteria for residential dwellings. Skipping right into that and just mentioning that with a Class B operation, there is a setback distance of a 1/2 mile. And as you can see, this property, the subject property is outlined in red. There are 2 residential dwellings within the setback, the minimum setback distance of that 1/2 mile. As you can see to the southeast, just at the corner of that red. And then at the other, that northwest, there is another residential dwelling that is just also underneath that 1/2 mile distance. And the site itself, there's a barn right here. There is an existing operation there on the property of 500 head with the intent of growing towards 1,500 head. And just skipping forward, this shows a zoomed in map of the existing dirt lot that has the 150 head right there. You can see right there in the map, there's a barn right there. And this is a picture of that existing yard with the cattle. This is looking to the northwest. There's the tree line. And then moving north of that tree line, you have another hoop barn there and a cattle yard to the north of that. This is just showing that how many head of cattle that are there. This is that 299 head hoop barn. This adds up to that existing capacity. The proposed building size would be roughly 332 feet by 50 feet. The petitioner has noted on the site plan to be this area right here. You can hardly see it, but it'd be run along the fence line. This is an existing creek area. Yeah, existing creek area where the grass is growing there. This is that barn that I was telling you about, the existing barn, the cattle inside there. This is the north area where that existing cattle lot is. And again, the same thing there. Then looking back on the north side of the barn, and one more. This is the view of where that proposed building would sit, as I mentioned, the 332 by 50. The tree area right here, this is the creek, so it drops off down towards the intermittent stream, which meets all of the criteria for the separation distance for environmental setbacks to the intermittent stream, which is 100 feet. So the distance to that is met from the petitioner's standpoint. So the petitioner has laid out, just going through really briefly, this is the area that's adjacent to the road as a part of the dead animal disposal plan. That's where that would be taken care of. Not touching on that too much. So this is looking at that property to the southeast. So down south of the road, the tree area right here, there's a house tucked in back in here. That's within the 1/2 mile. And skip forward to This is the creek area, that intermittent stream. As you can see, the barn is back there in the distance. That's where the existing feedlot is. This is the property to the northwest. As you can see, there's another existing shelter belt of evergreen trees there. And I'll just skip forward. Looking back, you can kind of see the barn. There it is, the white in the background. This is looking across that creek from the site of the property owner to the northwest. Actually, no, that was actually looking from the road that the property owner accesses from their driveway. I messed up on that one. So, in the interest, or just with the base information, the existing cattle barn has a full concrete floor with concrete walls, and the manure is scraped and hauled to the fields. The property itself contains 160 acres. Just in the interest of time, this is a public hearing, and there may be people, because notices went out and the sign was posted on the property. So there may be people that want to speak on this. Since the petitioner has been unable to obtain the waivers from the residential property owners, and also there has been no landscape plans submitted by a registered landscape architect, staff finds that staff recommends deferral for 1 month to the April 23rd Planning Commission. And I would be glad to answer any questions. I've showed some of the pictures. So yeah, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Any questions, Paul?
The applicant's been unable to get the waivers or hasn't tried yet?
Has been unable to get them, or believe, and the applicant can clarify, but I think they've tried.
It had just read in here to me like they had planned to go ask for the waivers and hadn't yet. I'm just looking for the clarification of had they tried, and the neighbors have said, has tried? Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, is the petitioner here? Come forward, state your name and address, please.
Jared Quested, 25176 471st Avenue, Baltic. Kind of walking through the progression of getting these waivers. Contacted both individuals. The people to the northwest said that they're not openly opposed to it, but they did not want to sign a waiver. The people to the southeast decided that they did not want to sign it either. So that's where we kind of are today. I guess with the deferral, I suppose we could go with the architect tree planting and do that to change the setback. And that's probably the way we'll go. And I'd like to, if we did that, I'd like to go back to these neighbors and see if maybe they'd be more accepting to it. Neither of them really had a strong opinion against it. They just didn't want to sign the waiver, I guess. So that's where we are. Any questions?
I would
Yeah.
just say that I think it's positive that you're willing to continue to work with them to find a solution that's palatable for them as well. And I guess I'm willing to listen to any others that want to testify on this.
Yeah, and you know, the 1,500 head, I guess I should say, you know, we don't plan on doing this overnight. It's going to take a little time to kind of get to that place. But I just thought, you know, being proactive, we can kind of get to that over time and kind of let things adjust. But yeah, as much as I'd like to be approved tonight, I guess we'll be deferred if that's the decision that's made. So
I agree with Jeff. It's like a good neighbor thing, you know, if you can work it out between you, if it does come down to that.
Ideally, Madam Chair, I would like to support the application with the idea of giving you a chance to go get the variances, and that's why I asked the question if that's already been tried or not. Because if they grant the variance, then I don't see any reason that we would have to have him come back. But without that or the site plan, I think our hands are kind of tied based on the zoning to say, kind of got to have one or the other.
Yep.
So I guess that'd be my feeling, if we did defer a month, and it gives them the chance to either come back with that site plan that's required, the architect-approved plan, or ideally you get something worked out with the neighbors.
right. Yep.
Okay, we'll see if there's anybody here in the audience that has, we have any proponents or opponents in the audience concerning this conditional use permit?
Make a motion to defer, Madam Chair.
Second that.
Yes, sir. Your
Okay, a
proponent
motion's
there.
been made and seconded to defer conditional use permit 18-15. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. That will be deferred till April 23rd. Item number 9, Kevin? And Becky will recuse herself from this particular item.
All right. Kevin Oakman, County Planning Department. Item number 9 is conditional use permit number 1816, and this is to allow Class B dairy CAFO of 1,680 animal units. The property is located approximately 3.5 miles south of Baltic along Highway 122, which is 254th Street. The petitioner would like to expand an existing dairy. On the site that currently holds 600 cows to a Class B dairy, which will hold 1,160 cows and 50 calves for a total of 1,680 animal units, as a dairy cow is calculates to 1.4 animal units each. This particular property has a long history of permits for dairy dating back to 1981. The current operation is constructed to under a permit conditional use permit 80858, which was in 2008. That would allow us up to 890 animal units. The current operation does require a conditional use permit as a part of the conditions of approval. The proposed facility is also above 1,000 animal units, so it automatically will require a state general permit, whether it's part of a condition or not. It is also mapped over a shallow aquifer, which triggers that general permit requirement, although it has been noted that soil tests and the engineering of the lagoon shows that the facility can be placed where it's at and that no aquifer exists. The petitioner has even taken the extra step to contact the city of Sioux Falls regarding the proposal, and no known concern was brought up based on that contact. Bring a little bit closer into the site plan. Petitioner has listed a site plan and a narrative, a brief narrative. A secondary narrative was sent out to surrounding property owners, and his staff's understanding that there was supposed to be a meeting, and the petitioner should be able to discuss that, what happened at the meeting, to just meet the neighbors and explain what's going on with the proposal. The proposed site plan shows that a new building will be proposed that's 200 feet by 300 feet to the east of the existing barn. The distance from the barn to the nearest property line is greater than 100 feet, which also happens to be this property line follows the intermittent stream, and the 100 feet is the required setback from that intermittent stream. So it's both 100 feet from the property line and the intermittent stream. All other existing facilities and buildings meet that 50-foot setback requirement. The property itself is approximately 34 acres in size. and, let's see, which will give us plenty of room for parking lots and loading and unloading of animals and milk off the right-of-way. The petitioner has submitted a landscape plan that, as of last Friday, has been revised. So you have not received the new landscape plan. So this is the current landscape, or the previous landscape plan that has been updated to this, which allows a little bit more trees along the east side of the lagoon and a change in the types of trees that are going to be planted. This new landscape plan has been designed and are approved by a professional landscape architect, as seen by the stamp there, which we'll get to shortly here. The reason for the requirement of the landscape architect design plans is that the facility does not meet all the setbacks as is for required setbacks of 1,980 feet from the nearest dwelling, church, or business. With the trees there, the setback can be reduced to 990 feet with the professional landscape architect drawings of the tree with tree plantings. To the north of the site, staff still has some concerns regarding this. The farmstead here, which is really close to the property, does have a waiver. There's also the previous owner of the property prior to the current owner. There are 4 other dwellings located north of this property that are located within the required setback. Currently, there is a lot of material between the facility and those dwellings, but unfortunately they are not on the petitioner's property, nor is there a plan for that part of the property to be mitigated yet. So that is a concern for staff moving forward. Waivers can be obtained from property owners. As noted, this property owner has a waiver, and so does this property owner. They have waivers signed for the facility. So I'll quickly go through the conditional use permit criteria for this facility. So the effect upon enjoyment and use of the properties in the surrounding area for current property uses. The proposed CAFO is located in predominantly agricultural area, and it's an expansion of an existing site. This is a little bit different, that there are 12 single-family houses that are located within the required setbacks, and that is quite a few houses compared to most facilities of this size. As noted in the staff report, higher than normal density. Many of the dwellings were present at the last couple of permit applications, so they have been there at past times when this facility has been attempted to increase in size. A few nearby dwellings have recently been built and were required to have the right to farm notice covenant placed in the deed at the time of the construction. The proposed site is at an existing use, and the expansion will approximately double the allowable animal units on the property. All animals will be located inside buildings, and trees will be planted around the CAFO. That should help reduce smells and sight lines of the facility. There are currently no trees surrounding the property, and this should help reduce some of that potential nuisance. The effect upon normally orderly development and improvement to the surrounding area in the future. Again, agricultural use would likely not be affected and may be a benefit to agricultural uses, as the manure can be used to spray for nutrients on the surrounding fields. However, this may affect future development of any other residential dwellings. There aren't a whole lot of residential building eligibilities available in this area, hence, since most of them have been developed, but there are a few. And in general, such uses as CAFOs may or may lead to residential uses that are less desirable in close proximity to this type of project. Utilities, access roads, and drainage. The proposed facility will use the existing driveway, and the site plan has grading and drainage plans on the site plan where the lagoon will take the water that flows off the property. There is the intermittent stream on the east side of the property that flows nearby that is proposed to also have that tree belt buffer between the facility and the stream. That off-street parking and loading requirements are met. The facility, as noted before, has plenty of space to meet the parking and loading requirements. The measures are taken to control odor, dust, fumes, and vibration and lighting so that none of these will constitute a nuisance. It is the inherent nature of a CAFO like this to have potential to create nuisances if not managed properly. This is especially true for odors, fumes, and dust. The petitioner has submitted management plans and site plans to aid in reducing nuisances, including odor and flies. Any management practices included in the narrative will be expected to be carried out. And then the last criteria, the health, safety, and general welfare of the public in the comprehensive plan. The proposed CAFO will have to meet the county zoning ordinance. And these rules are designed to allow for development while preventing much of the potential harms that a CAFO facility may create. And the facility is also required to obtain a state permit because of its size and location over a aquifer. The proposed CAFO is located firmly within the agricultural production area of the 2035 comprehensive plan. In the description of this designated area, a goal of the Envision 2035 plan is to protect, preserve, and promote agricultural uses and economic vitality of farming operations. But as staff noted earlier, there is some concerns over the landscape, and this plan here is good, and I feel like it would be sufficient to reduce the setback according to the ordinance for the properties on the east, south, and the west side, but it does not yet address the north side. We can discuss that more tonight, but as of right now, staff recommends deferral of action of the CAFO. I guess, is there any questions?
Kevin, in the upper left-hand corner of that picture, are those trees up there?
Yes, and those are trees that are located on the neighboring property.
Sure, but those are trees at this point. Okay.
Yep. I suppose if the property owner wants to come up with an agreement between the Hogginsons that are here, we could count those trees to be part of this facility as well to reduce the setback. Come up with something creative like that.
Are those on the Hogginson's property?
Yes.
I see. Thank you.
Any other questions for Kevin?
Not yet.
Can you just reiterate one more time, Kevin, how many houses there are right there within that picture that aren't part of the property? I want to make sure I've got it right.
Okay. So you can probably see it a little bit more in this picture. So to the east, there's a small development right here that has 5 dwellings. There's a cemetery right here as well, the Pioneer Cemetery. And the road kind of wraps around here. I have a couple site pictures from that I can maybe show you. Then there are 2 dwellings here, and an old dwelling that's not being used that could be built another one on this property right here. There are dwelling here. I don't believe this one is in that setback. I can't recall if this one's in setback or not. And there's 2 dwellings here, a dwelling here, 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 and then right here. So, yes, these dwellings to the north are the ones that, there is tree material here, but as you can see, the outline of red is where the petitioner owns property and owns down here as well.
Thanks.
I can go through the pictures. I forgot to do that. There's a picture of the existing facility. They did recently do a large expansion, or I shouldn't say large, but an expansion to meet their current permitted facility, including expansion of the lagoon in order to better meet their manure management needs. There's a picture down the driveway up towards the silage pit. Kind of, you can see the row of trees blocking the nearest neighbor, the Hogginson property. And this is kind of towards the lagoon. It's all been recently done, so there's lots of mud because it was just recently finished. This is looking south from the driveway. You'll see along, there's kind of a hill as you go up here, and then you can see the tops of the trees of that south property, and there's some more properties there. This right here is that next nearest property, or with a dwelling. That one has a waiver. And then this is looking across the lagoon. You can see the cemetery in the background, and that's where the development is located, that little 5-house development. Little zoomed in from that spot. And then this is from the end of the township road, looking towards the southeast, towards the farmstead that way. And this is, or excuse me, that was the southwest. This is the southeast. You can see that hill a little bit, and then the trees in the distance where it shows where a couple more dwellings have popped up, and there's still another one available in that location. Another picture of the south. So this is looking at that intermittent stream, kind of up towards the facility. You can see that it currently has no trees. You can see the berm there made for the manure. And then this is looking from the road next to the cemetery, is right behind me in this picture, looking at the facility. You can see it's kind of sitting in this valley as it goes from there. So go back to the main site plan.
Thank you, Kevin. Is the petitioner here? Please come forward and state your name and address.
Lynn Bodewine, 46945, 251st Street, Baltic, South Dakota.
Any questions for the petitioner?
Lynn, have you talked to the neighbors?
Yeah, you know, I haven't gone around personally and talked. We notified around the same time we had an open house on Saturday, and we put, my cell phone number on it, and, we put 2, and so we had, the open house was kind of rotten on Saturday.
Great weather for it.
Yeah, no, it was good, and so, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, if we have any further questions, we'll have you come back up.
Okay.
Any other proponents? Any opponents? Will you come forward? State your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Mark Wielden. My address is 25418 Riverbend Place. I just built a new house. I haven't moved into it yet, so I think that's why I didn't get the invitation to the open house on the weekend. I did get the notification of this hearing, though. My concern, I have a few concerns. A lot of it stems around the creek, the intermittent stream. A few years back, we had a rain event that was north of this area that dumped about 8 inches of rain, and it flooded that creek area. It actually closed off 254th Street. There's a 9-foot culvert that goes under the highway there, but it couldn't handle the water capacity. My concern is with the enlargement of the lagoon, and then it looks like it's gonna be approximately another, probably 70–80% larger than it currently is. Is that correct? Is it gonna go to the north there of the existing lagoon?
The lagoon, the waste system is what it is. It's finished. There's no
Oh, that
further-
part's finished.
Yeah, there's no
Okay.
further waste system. That's done.
Okay. Well, my concern is if we were to have a failure of the lagoon in a heavy rain event, that creek goes right into the Sioux River. And the Sioux River on my property, I've got property on both sides of the Sioux River, and the creek that runs through the property, it's approximately 62 acres. And my area on the south side of the highway is in the water source protection area. And so this is right up against that. And so my biggest concern is, you know, pollution in the event we had a rain event that it couldn't handle. The other concern that I have is the odor from the area. There's always been an odor there. I've owned the property for 10 years, so I'm quite familiar with how it's been throughout the years. And there's certain times during the year where the smell can get fairly strong, but it's not something you can't live with. That's why I built a house out there. But now that it's gonna be twice the size that it was before, I'm a little concerned about that because I still have another dwelling permit I can exercise on my property. My neighbor to the south of me, Pat Cannon, he's got a eligibility that he can exercise. There's some additional ones in the area and to the south of us. So there's a potential to add about another 8 homes in that area. And this will affect the value of the property and the value of the homes in that area. I agree that with the trees being put in, that would help with the odor, but I don't know what size trees they're gonna plant and how long it's gonna take for them to really be effective in the odor control. So those are what my concerns were. So. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? Will you please come to the podium, state your name and address, please?
So our property is,
Probably she needs to say his name again.
Yeah, say your name again.
Cannon, I'm sorry.
And your address.
So 25425 Riverbend Place. So if you could put that larger view up, thanks. And I just didn't want Mark to have to stand up here all by himself. Lynn put on a wonderful open house the other day. We were there, I got a grilled cheese sandwich. It was great. And I still like to drink milk after that. Sometimes when you tour these things, it changes your appetite, but this was really good. There's a little rectangle right there. So that's 5 acres. It's the old Peterson farm. It's been abandoned for about 50 or 60 years, but we bought it 13 years ago. And I've been out there breaking my back, improving it. We just spent quite a bit of money on clearing it. The old house is still there. So yeah, I don't have a whole lot of an axe to grind. The thing I noticed though is I got this plat, and the little creek wasn't shown at all. You can barely, oh gosh, can you say you couldn't throw a cat across that creek? You couldn't. It's about 25 foot wide where it goes into the Sioux River. So, and that culvert that goes under the road is as tall as a ceiling. I just didn't get a chance to ask you, Lynn, about that when we were there. And so I don't mean to blindside you. I just wanted to be sure people were thinking about, as Mark mentions, there's millions of pounds of manure in that. We just want to be sure that if there's an 8-inch rain, that's covered. And it sounds like it is. I mean, it sounds like you did the engineering. I was just alarmed that I didn't see that tributary on the plat that came out with the announcement. So it made me wonder, and you may say the city is okay with it. So I'm not objecting. I'm just asking how much thought has been given to the watershed, and maybe Lynn wants to take another run at that. But if you defer it, I'm sure this stuff will all shake out eventually, and I just didn't want to sit silent here. And thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Pat Cannon again. If you're asking for 1,140 animals, it's 1680 is the classification, but you're talking about 1140. And I'm an engineer. I'm a registered professional engineer, independent, and so I like to mess with the numbers. And I'm just thinking that could we limit it to 1140 instead of if you were to, if ownership were to change, would that be transferable to 1,680 animals, or would it be limited to 1140, which is what he's saying he wants to expand to?
We can bring him back to the podium and he can try to address that.
Yeah, okay. I just didn't know what the rules were for that, so I had 1, 2, 3. I guess that's the limit, transferability of it, and then the correct. Those are just things I think we should be thinking about.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Lynn, do you want to try to address any of those, maybe those questions?
Yeah, and I think I just want to make sure that I get them all. If I forget something, I'm going to go just backwards a little bit. When I talked to the Hogginsons, about purchasing the property, and we've been friends, and I've known them for, since I was little. And, I knew and understood completely, they'd built that dairy there in '94. And, I knew and understood the amount of houses and everything around there. And I knew that we'd really have to be, top of our game, because this is an area that requires, and that's why, when I went into it, when you buy a piece of property, you're not always sure everything. That's why we redid the waste system. It was built in '94, and for me, I had to be completely comfortable. I didn't construct the last one, and we redid the whole lagoon liner and sized it. And that was one of the things that I think Pat talked about. We raised, we made the system larger, and we elevated the sides on it, and did it. I just wanted to be completely certain. So now with the city of Sioux Falls, I met with them prior to purchasing the property, I met with them a couple times. And then I met with them again on this proposed expansion. I just want to be clear about it. The waste system, as it is exactly what will be there. I'm planning on, putting the trees around it, regardless of the outcome. I had a decision to make because, quite frankly, we were sinking so much money into it, and the renovation is what prompted me to, at that point, that's why I even built the pad for the building, knowing I needed to make this financially viable. And so with that, then we went, to the city, and, last week, there was a bunch of questions, from them. I mean, it was, if I remember, some of them was, basic ones, would you submit the permit application materials to the state nutrient management plan? We have well over the number of acres we need, and we've got more acres, guys that want to sign up. I submitted that to the city. We're to the point, with DNR, waiting for their, reply back. I mean, that's how the process works. So regardless of the size of it, we're getting the DNR permit regardless. And I think, the city just wanted to know, I mean, Lynn, would you put a plan together if there was ever a, if you thought lagoon, any waste system was, going to overflow or anything. So the part that I responded on that is we own, somewhat unique, we own a waste application system, a hose system, drag. I like that for the comfort of, you don't have to wait for a custom applicator if you had an issue. So, and this land area, it's conducive. We can apply manure in the spring and fall. And what I like about that is owning the system, it's really a commitment to keep the waste system low. I mean, in my mind, that's risk mitigation for any concern with that system, overflowing. The flood, that waterway, I did talk to one of the guys that was on the fire department there when they closed the road. And, I was just wondering how often, did that happen? I mean, we talked about that. What had happened is a large log, crossed it. And I'm not saying that can't happen. And that was one of the thought process behind raising that system up. So I didn't want to have a lot of problems. And I did put in, like I did at my home farm, closed loop sand separation system, and that's complicated. I won't go into it at this time, but my feeling, being in the dairy business a long time, that was like the least odor system that I could put in an operation like this. It's a closed loop, so you're not taking manure stream and so, and the trees, now that's the part we can't, I want trees to grow really fast, and everybody wants, and so, usually I put os trees, and I've put a row of os trees around the exterior of this, and they're rapid growing, a hybrid that, I can get them to, in 3 years, will be, 20 some feet. The second row is a poplar, which is, and they're not long-lived trees. And so I had NRCS develop the plan at first, and I did make a mistake there. I've done, many of these for the county, and I've always used NRCS or soil conservation to design the tree plan. And I did, and then I find out, they're not a licensed landscape, so I did contact, and then we got in a meeting together with NRCS and them, and we put together with the landscape engineer, and most of some of the landscape engineer design was, really around aesthetics. Not to minimize, but fall colors and some of those things with the tree plan. But, we did add more rows, and then I wanted to add more, because I'd like it to be, I'm concerned about the Sioux River, and the Sioux River, we're right next to a tributary, and I want this to be kind of an ideal site that can show that agriculture can, survive in a vibrant rural residential community. So I put together what I think is a good tree plan with fast-growing trees, and then we did add some older trees, and I put a row of evergreens in. So I added more with that. Is there anything that I forgot in the questions that?
May I speak from here, or should I?
You've got to come up.
You have to go to the podium, please.
Thanks, Larry. No, that's. Yeah, I think I want to know, people that aren't in this room today that aren't involved in the discussion, and that would be down the road, if it were to change hands, and we permitted it for 1,680 annual. And maybe I'm just missing something, but it sounds like the way it's going to be designed, it'll work with 1140. Isn't that kind of what's going on? Oh, I'm sorry, I don't get to do it that way. I beg your pardon. So that was the question I had. If we're going to permit it, if he only needs, and he's building it for 1140, and I don't know that question, and I'm asking you through the ozone here what that question, and if it needs to be 1680, well, that's a different matter. But if we're talking about doubling the number of cows there, that brings us to about 1140. If we go to 1680, now we're tripling it. So, just to play with numbers, that's 400 rail cars of manure a year. So I just want to know whether we're talking 300 or 400, and whether or not later in the future, because it's permitted as Class B, somebody else can buy it and expand it.
If I go ahead, Paul.
Go ahead, Jeff. You want?
Well, I was
just
just
even going to try to help take some load off Kevin.
Oh, that would be good.
I was going to say that a dairy cow is not one animal unit. It's 1.3 or possibly even 1. Oh, sorry. Thank you. So the number of animal units you're permitted is not the same as the number of animals in the barn.
So it's 1,160 cows and 50 calves, which equates to 1,680 animal units. So if he gets the permit, he can't operate at more head than that, or more animal units, or vice versa. So
Kevin,
it is limited even on a transfer of ownership, correct?
Yes.
And so what is the status of transfer of ownership?
If the owner takes on the existing permit, then he will be able to operate under the existing permit. That's currently what Lynn is doing right now, is operating under the 2008 permit that was permitted under Hogginson's.
Kevin, it's still your opinion to defer it, though, is that correct?
So, you know, he has the waivers. He has a landscape plan on the south, east, and west side. If we could do an agreement to, or a condition to work with them about what we're going to do with this north side to comply with setback requirements for those north 4 dwellings. So that is a possibility, or we can defer it and work it with it prior to approval. So,
Madam Chair,
Commission, discussion?
you know, Mr. Hogginson is here, and I wonder if he might comment on where we're at with the existing
Will you come forward,
grove.
please? State your name and
Are you gonna
address.
burn that down and turn it into desert, or?
David Hogginson, 25357 473rd Avenue. And I guess I'm here probably speaking for the owner of that, because my father actually owns that piece of property. But, you know, the trees that are there, I would think, would certainly be sufficient to go forward with this. There is a lot of trees there. As a matter of fact, my mother said just a couple days ago that she can't even see that barn because of the existing trees there. And I'm not saying she has a problem with the barn, but she said she can't even see the barn. And that house, well, you can barely see it. It is right on the other side of the, I mean, it's within 100 feet of that barn. So, you know, maybe at some point there would should be some trees maybe north of the north or east of the feed facility, but that would have no effect on any neighbors. The trees that are there already would do what you are asking for, that would affect any of the neighbors to the north. So, any questions for me?
Thanks for coming up.
Thank you. Any other discussion from Commission?
So maybe just a quick clarification if I could.
Sure, Mike.
Would it be a potential to approve this contingent upon a acceptable landscape plan being submitted at a later date?
Kevin, you want to come up?
Yeah, you could approve that with a condition in it. You know, I don't see necessarily a problem with accepting the existing trees. And I know that the landowners are friends and they work together. If we could have some sort of an agreement that, you know, if trees are removed, that we're going to be getting something to replace them, if you know what I mean. Because for planning wise, we have to think that if this was, the Hogginson property was to ever be sold, who's going to take over and keep those trees there, or what's going to happen?
Well, Madam Chair, I guess I feel that in good faith that the plan is already here, and that I think we should go ahead and approve this going forward. I think that all the pieces are there. We may not agree completely on the name of each piece, but you know, the Hogginson family is going to keep their grove, and we have a certified landscaper stamp their stuff on this document. I think it's a go.
Paul, did you have a comment?
Well, I would just echo what Jeff just said. I mean, we've got a professional architect plan here, and if that professional architect thought that there needed to be additional trees beyond that thick grove that's already up there to the north, I'm sure they would have drawn that in. And I would agree that additional trees now, a few here or there, if we were to defer and say add some because we think there should be some, when clearly it's not anticipated that there is a benefit in having them with those trees already up there, wouldn't do us any good. I personally agree with Jeff and think that the good faith has definitely been shown. We've got a professional plan, and it's only gonna help. It's adding some cows, but twice the cows we've seen over and over doesn't mean twice the stink necessarily. And this is just improving a facility that already is obviously a pretty good facility, being operated really well. To
Any
me
other
personally,
comments?
I think we've got everything we need.
Any other comments?
I agree with you. I agree with what these guys have said.
I tend to too. I think, Glenn, you try to be a good neighbor and try to make sure that people are aware of what you're doing out there. Can't always say it's what they like or not like. It goes kind of with the territory. You know, we all that live in the country know that. But I believe that the requirements are pretty much set out there as what it has been, and we've been through a long night with these kind of operations. So,
Well,
I
Madam
would-
Chair,
I would make a comment quick that when you make the motion to accept the staff recommended conditions, as were present, in the staff report, there are recommendation conditions. I can read them if you'd like, but they've been,
I'd make that motion with
Okay.
staff recommended conditions.
Yep.
I'll second that.
okay, motion's made and seconded to approve conditional use permit 1816 with the staff recommendations. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. No old business? No new business?
I'll just make a couple quick
Okay,
comments.
go ahead.
You remember, last year we had our bus tour. They're doing another bus tour, it's May 8th. We were invited, for Adam, our new member. We work with, Minnehaha Community Economic Development, and we do a bus tour of the county. And it starts Tuesday, starts about 10 o'clock, it'll get over by 4:35. And we go to different facilities that we're working out the locations now. And, last year, Bonnie went, and Paul, and
Mike.
Mike Cipher, and we stopped at Odie Dairy, so he was involved as well.
What date is that?
May 8th.
May 8th.
Secondly, last Tuesday, the county was notified that the adjacent property owners are taking the county to court over the Hope Harbor plan development. So there is a pending litigation on that matter, so I thought I'd make you aware of that.
Madam Chair, I would also like to make another comment.
Sure, Jeff.
Before the Lewis and Clark pipeline went into effect, John Merrill's in Sioux Falls used 1/4 of the city's water. That one plant used 1/4 of the city's water. And there was a creek as wide and deep as that podium there that was flowing at high speed right into that John Merrill's plant. And, you know, it's a huge amount of water just to that one plant. We're lucky that all of our businesses like Citibank don't use that much water, but some businesses do require it. I just wanted to point that out.
Need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.